Hello, good evening. Got a bit of reflection from the light up above there. But this is looking at an album by the Cardigans, who were a band that were relatively popular or around, well known in the late 90s, very early 2000s. I guess their most famous song is Loveful, which was from the album before this, the first band on the moon, I think it was called. And it's got a very kind of like an earworm type chorus. Love me, that one. They are I guess you call it a rock band from Sweden. Although, would you call them a rock band? I don't know. On the genre descriptor bar for this album, it says they are alternative rock, electric rock, and post rock. Um, Yeah, I guess there's elements of all those you can hear in it. This came out in 1998. I picked this up secondhand in 2020, just a short while after I first came back from New Zealand, came back to New Zealand. I got this for 50 cents, I remember. And this was a band that um, I would never say I was a fan of, um, but there were a few songs of theirs that I thought were okay. And there's one song in particular that actually I completely forgot about. But then the first time I listened to this about 3 years ago, because I'd never listened to a full, I'd only, in their time of popularity in the late 90s, I'd only ever listened to whatever was played on the radio or the TV by them. So there was, like I said, Loveful, playing my favorite game, whatever it was. There was one or two other ones. So I probably heard a handful of songs of theirs. And then I remember Nina Pearson, the female vocalist, she also did a song with the Manic Street Preachers, "Your Love Alone," which I quite like that song. And I think they also did a duet, or she did a duet with Tom Jones, a cover of the Talking Heads song "Burning Down the House," which I didn't like. Um, but my point is, I didn't know much about them, but I just picked this album up because it was 50 cents, and you know, they weren't offensively bad or anything, so I thought I'd give it a listen. And when I did listen to it, a song that I had not honestly not heard for probably a good 20 years came on, and it was like, I guess I think I talked about this feeling the other day. I was referring to the same thing, a song where most songs you don't just hear, especially if they were popular enough for them to get into your memory. They were played on the radio. You don't just hear them and then not hear them again for 20 years. They will usually pop up from time to time, won't they? It's quite rare, or at least for me, someone who kind of listens to music a lot and seeks out music. It's not common to have a song that you heard enough that it could implant itself in your memory and then it just have this long gap. But the song I'm referring to is track two on this, Erase slash Rewind, or Erase and Rewind, I think as they say it in the song. I remember that was on the radio when I was about 1999, because this came out in late 98, and I would say the first single I think was Playing My Favorite Game. Yes. And then Erase Rewind was released as a single on the 22nd of February 1999, which is exactly what I'm saying. So 1999 for me was my first year after I'd finished high school. And unlike pretty much all of my friends, not pretty much, actually all of my friends, I didn't go directly to university after high school. And there were several reasons for that. Primarily being that I did particularly badly in my seventh. We call seventh form as your last year at high school in New Zealand. I guess nowadays they call it year 13 in America. Whatever the final grade of high school, the senior of high school is, whatever that was. I just basically gave up. I just yeah, lost all direction of anything, and other things as well. And then so I finished high school without anything, and then I met a girl, or started a relationship with a my girlfriend at the time, and the first few months of a relationship are so intense, especially when you're young, in your my late teens. It's like everything is magnified by the hormones you've got going through your body, and for especially guys, your brains aren't fully developed yet, and you make silly decisions, and well, you don't even make decisions. Shit just happens, and you let it happen. And I'm not saying it was bad or anything. Actually, I think back on this time quite fondly. But anyway, the first, I guess, 5 months of 1999, I kind of just drifted around in love, not really doing anything. I lost a job. I got fired from a job, and I was like, we were both, me and the girl, were both unemployed, but we didn't care. We were just like, it's just so in love. That kind of young love. So weird, isn't it? It's like you can't experience that when you're older, because when you're older, your brain has got enough maturity, and it's enough development, and kind of your hormones have balanced out a little bit, where you can kind of control yourself, at least to a degree. Although I will say, I have had other embarrassing forays in relationships where you do things that you wouldn't normally do, but maybe to a lesser extent than when you're a teenager. Anyway, my point in saying all this is that we listen to the radio a lot. We used to like to stay in her room, like lying in bed and like listening to the radio and shit, and things you do when you're young. And that song, Erase and Rewind, would have been a single. Like it says, it was released in February of that year. And so when I first heard that, again in 2020, when I bought this secondhand, it was like, I think I've described it this way before, like the mainline. It's like someone's injected into your veins, into your nervous system, all these memories that come flooding about. They're connected to the song, like the smells and the feelings and it's. I'm not describing it very well, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. Sometimes you get it from you smell a certain thing in the air, like someone's perfume, or even just the smell of like like pine trees. That gives me that smell of Christmas, or other things, certain kinds of food, and it just kind of like zaps you back in time, and it's like you get pulled backwards through the wormhole of time. Well, that's how I felt when I heard that song, Erase and Rewind. It was like what do you call it? Like I can't even put into words. And that's how like powerful music can be. It's like how strongly intertwined it is with certain memories of your life or experiences. And when you hear it again after not hearing it or even if you do hear it, even if you hear it again after hearing it many times, it can still do it. But especially if you haven't heard it for a long time, it's honestly, like I said, you're like someone's injected in something into your nervous system. You're like, and you're sucked back in time, and all these like memories and shit comes rushing into you. And sometimes that can be good, and sometimes that can be bad as well. Maybe things that you don't want to really remember. But anyway, the album itself, I think, is actually not a bad album. I've listened when I first got this 3 years ago. I listened to it through a couple of times, and I thought, this is not bad. And then I probably listened to it a handful of times over the last 3 years, and then I've listened to it again a couple of times yesterday and today. And I'll say there's a good number of songs on there that are pretty good. I'd say there's about 3 or 4 songs that I think are very good. If you've heard their albums before this one's quite different. As in this is their fourth, I believe it's their fourth album. And their albums before this were almost kind of like, I don't know how you, twee, or like cutesy, kind of like almost folk pop. And because Nina Pearson's vocal, she's got quite a delicate voice, and I guess that kind of adds to the kind of what I was just saying there, the mood or the atmosphere the music generates, and then together the instrumentation was much more defined in the previous albums. Um, and in comparison to this, they used a lot of electronic elements. Like the bass sounds almost exclusively like it's, you know, electronic bass, as in not like a bass guitar, like it's, you know, whatever played on a synthesizer or a keyboard or something. And the drums sound like a drum machine throughout the album. I'm sure there's not, because I'm pretty sure the band has a bassist and a drummer. You know, they got 5 members there. Those guys must be doing something. You don't hear a lot of guitar. Or if the guitar you are hearing, I assume it has a lot of effects and a lot of processing on it. The album sounds quite cold, has quite a cold feeling. And I don't mean cold in a bad way, because I think sometimes cold albums can be quite good. I like cold sounds, but quite a lot more detached and less human than the previous albums, and certainly lost that tweeness or cuteness. A lot more kind of, I wouldn't say serious, but don't know what I'd say. Cold, yeah. Cold is maybe the best way I can put it. Trying to see if there's a lineup of who's in the band so that I can see what they actually do. Some nice scenery. No, it doesn't say. They've all got very Swedish names, don't they? Peter Svensson and Olof Johansson and Nina Persson and Dennis Johansson and Roger Johnson. Like I said, they're Swedish. You know, Sweden has produced a lot of internationally renowned, successful pop and rock acts for the size of the country. I think the population of Sweden is around 9 million, just at a guess. I'll check that. But if you compare that to, like, what's another country of a similar population? You know, Belgium, for example. I don't know. I think Belgium actually might have more than 9 million. Okay, 10.42 for Sweden. Let's see Belgium. So 10.5 million for Sweden. And of course, it doesn't say for Belgium. Why would it? The population of Belgium is 11 million. Okay, there we go. So slightly more. But how many Belgian acts do you know? There's a few French language artists like what's his name, Dick Arnegan, and who's the other guy? Oh, Jacques Brel. I think he is a Wallonian Belgian, as in, you know, a French-speaking Belgian. I'm pretty sure Jacques Brel is Belgian, but anyway, certainly no one that has kind of made, you know, wide success outside of the francophone world, or even I don't know, Germany. I guess Germany's kind of got like Rammstein, and then I guess, yeah, Germany had a few more. But really, when you think of Sweden, of course they had ABBA, and ABBA is one of the biggest acts ever, pop acts ever. If you look at, you know, album sales and number ones and things like that, and then in the 90s there was a lot of you know, like the Hives and Melancholy and the Helicopters, these guys, the Cardigans. And then there's a whole Swedish metal, like death metal, which, if you don't really know much about metal, you probably know what I'm talking about. But there's a Swedish metal is pretty, it's like kind of a thing into itself. You know, it's like melodic death metal. There's a city in Sweden called Gothenburg, I think it's said, that's kind of like seen as like one of the central hubs of a particular kind of death metal sound. You know, there's Tampa and there's Gothenburg and a few other places as well. So I'm sure there are other ones I'm forgetting as well. Hang on. Oh, Roxette, remember them? They had a lot of big hits in the late 90s, mid 80s, late 90s. That guy Max Martin, who basically wrote a lot of those songs from like the early 2000s. Britney Spears, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC kind of area. I think he's also written for Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift. Ace of Base. A lot, and I'm just kind of skimming. There are a lot of other ones that maybe are not as big, but Europe, the Final Countdown, Backyard Babies, Sahara Hot Nights. Some of these are a little bit less well known, but they're still, I know them, and I'm but yeah, for a country of that size, of just 10 million people, they have produced a lot of music, a lot of well-renowned music outside of Sweden, outside of Europe, all around the world. And I think it's part of it is because the Swedish government supports musicians. I think I talked about this when I was talking about Refused, another Swedish band. Oh, Meshuggah. Fucking how influential is Meshuggah? Every modern gent fucking metalcore band completely rips off the sound of Meshuggah. You know what I mean? That in a bad way. I just mean their sound in the early 90s and the mid 90s was so groundbreaking that and the use of drums and stuff, that like everything, even the people who don't realize just how influential they are in that kind of extreme metal. Anyway, what I'm saying is for a country of that size, they've produced a lot of amazing music. But I was saying is that I think the government supports. They pay musicians, like it can be like a job, and the government will, instead of paying you unemployment benefit, they'll pay you to be a professional musician, even if you're not making enough from touring or playing concerts or whatnot. And so that engenders a kind of atmosphere of people who think that musician is a viable career to an extent. I don't know if I'm 100% right on that. That might have just been in the past, but fact remains, shitload of music is produced in Sweden. Also, that guy, that DJ who, not to be morbid, but he took his own life, Avicii, he was Swedish as well. A lot of that really cheesy Euro dance shit, like a Bass Hunter and stuff like that, that's Swedish as well. The Knife, we talked about her, Fever Ray, Karin, whatever her name is. Haven't really talked about much about the Cardigans here, have I? It's a good album. The tracks I like in particular are 1, Paralyzed, 2, Erase a Rewind, 7, Marvel Hill's probably my favorite song on the album, Marvel Hill. Also like my favorite game, which was one of the other singles. Junk of the Hearts, I like that as well. And I just think in general it's a pretty solid album. It didn't actually get that great reviews. Didn't get terrible reviews either, but it was pretty middling. It was AllMusic gave it 2.5 out of 5. Oh, The Guardian gave it 4 out of 5. So okay, there's a bit of a mix there. I'd say this is definitely a 3 out of 5. Probably maybe a 3.5 out of 5. It's something different. It has that late 90s electronic music mixed with rock, kind of almost trip hop. A lot of, like I said, drum machine. But yeah, it's interesting and different, and some legitimately good songs on it. And if you're of a similar age of mine, you might put on that song Erase and Rewind and have a similar feeling as to what I had. Though probably not, because I don't imagine it was a massive single. Let's see how it did around the world. This album sold 3 million copies worldwide, which I was quite surprised. That's pretty decent. So it got to number 7 in Erase Rewind, the single got to number 7 in the UK. Okay, well, there we go. New Zealand got to 36. US, there's no entry, so I assume it did nothing there. But it got top 10 in a lot of European countries. Number 3 in Iceland. So yeah. Anyway, that's a real ramble. I say that at the end of every video, but that's a real ramble, isn't it? I was going on about all sorts of shit. Going on about everything almost except for their album, but yeah. And we'll leave it there. Thank you for watching.